Hello. Today's Gospel reading is quite an exciting one. Jesus walks on water, a miracle in itself, and then Peter does so as well. Until he starts to worry, that is. Much is normally made in sermons about this passage of Peter doubting and then failing. Silly Peter, messing up again. But he walked on water. That was a miracle. As far as we know, nobody else in the history of the world has managed to walk on water. Various people have tried it, but none have managed without artificial help. A few years ago, I tried to do so in one of those inflatable ball things that you can go on water in. And even with the help, it's a lot easier than it looks. Now, I spent more time falling over and trying to get up again than I actually did standing up and able to walk on water, so to speak. We might be able to swim, we might be able to float, even for a very long time. But the laws of physics mean that people cannot walk on water. Some insects and even frogs can because of the surface tension of the water. But we are far too big for that to work. So why did Jesus and Peter walk on water? Well, for Jesus, after the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus had sent the disciples ahead of him across the lake. He knew that he needed to spend some time alone with God. And he did that while the disciples were working their way over the stormy lake. He knew that having given out a lot, he needed time with God by himself to refresh and replenish. But he also knew that the disciples needed him back with them quickly, so he joined them in the storm. They had the boat with them, so he walked out to meet them. He couldn't use the boat to get to them because they were on it. As God, walking on water was something that Jesus could easily do. And when he got to them, they were scared, not just of the huge waves, but also because they thought they were being joined by a ghost. They didn't recognise Jesus to begin with because, well, nobody can walk on water, can they? So this must be something supernatural. At this point, Jesus tells them not to be afraid. He didn't want them to be scared. He wanted them to trust him. He wanted them to know that they were safe. So what about Peter? Why did he decide to try walking on water? Some people say that he was being stupid or a bit rash, as he often was. Some people think he was trying to show off. But I think he was just trying to be a disciple. A disciple is a follower of Jesus, someone who learns from Jesus and does what Jesus did. I can imagine him thinking, Jesus has been teaching us to follow him, to be more like him, to do the things that he does. To be kind to people who others reject, to heal people. We've seen him do that. And now he's walking on water. So I should probably do that too. And Peter does it. He walks on water. So often we focus on the fact that he started to be afraid and started to sink. But think about it for a minute. Peter actually managed to do the impossible and walk on water. He trusted Jesus. He had faith, and he followed Jesus in doing this. But more importantly, I think, when it all started to go wrong, even though he was scared and sinking, Peter still trusted Jesus. He called out to Jesus to help him. He realised he needed Jesus' help. He wasn't too proud to ask to be saved. And Jesus reached out and rescued him. Having saved him, Jesus said to Peter, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" Now these words can sound very different depending on the tone that is used. You of little faith, why did you doubt? Angry and frustrated. Or, oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? Gentle and caring. From what we know about Jesus, I think it would have been the latter. Peter recognised that trusting Jesus, trusting God, is rather important. Just think for a minute about the kind of people that you trust. Sadly, I think as a society we're becoming less trusting, and sadly, sometimes that is for good reason. But hopefully we've all got people that we know we can trust, who we know we can rely on. Now, every now and then, surveys are done to see which professions the general public trust most. What do you think? Who do you think would come top? Well, back in 2022, when the latest survey was done that I've been able to find anyway, nurses came top, with 89% of the public trusting them. What about the bottom, the least trustworthy? That is our politicians, with 12% of people trusting them. Clergy are unfortunately only trusted by 55% of the population, but hopefully you feel that you can trust me. Trust is something that tends to be earned, doesn't it? If we're wise, we look at the evidence and assess whether or not someone can be trusted. Does what they do match up with what they say? Are they respected by others that we trust? Peter trusted Jesus because he had spent time with him and had seen what he did, how he treated people, how he transformed their lives. And probably most importantly, how Jesus had treated Peter and transformed his life. Jesus' response to the sinking Peter would also have increased Peter's trust in him, and that of those who witnessed it from the boat. It led them to conclude that Jesus must be God's Son. Now, we don't get to see Jesus physically performing miracles and transforming lives in the same way that those first disciples did. But we can still know that we can trust him because of what we read about him and God in the Bible, but also because of the stories that other people tell us of what God has done in their lives and how he has been faithful to them. I could go on for hours with different stories from my own life. I won't, don't worry. I have so many stories of how God has been good to me and why I trust God. That doesn't mean that life has been all plain sailing. There have been some really stormy and tough times over the years. But I'm still following. And God has always been faithful and reached out to save me when I've been sinking. Because like Peter, there have been times when I've been overwhelmed by worry or fear and have started sinking. When the storms have raged and the waves have felt too big. There's a lovely passage from the prophet Isaiah that says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze." A promise from God to his people. Now, I've always found that to be true, no matter what is going on. If you've experienced that too, then why not use your story to encourage others? And if you're struggling right now and feel like you're sinking, remember that you aren't alone. Jesus is there with you in the storm and is ready to reach out his hand to save you. And just like there were other disciples in the boat with Peter, there are other followers of Jesus who can encourage and support you too. If you can, ask others around you to help you float. Whether it feels like life is all smooth sailing at the moment, or whether the waves feel like they're the biggest you've ever experienced, Jesus is with you and will never let you go, will never let you sink. Amen.